There is a belief about spiritual guidance that sounds comforting and spiritual, but it actually creates more confusion, doubt, and frustration than almost anything else. But once you see this clearly, guidance stops feeling mysterious or unreliable, and it starts to feel calm, consistent, and woven into everyday life. So let's talk about the biggest lie that people believe about spiritual guidance. Now, by the end of this episode, you're going to understand what the biggest lie about spiritual guidance actually is, why believing it makes guidance feel inconsistent or absent, and what spiritual guidance really looks like when it's working properly. Now, if you stay with me to the end, you'll stop waiting for guidance to arrive in dramatic ways and start recognizing how spirit already communicates with you, often more reliably than you actually realize. And if you don't, it's easy to keep assuming that spirit has gone quiet, keep questioning yourself, and to keep waiting for something external, while the real guidance continues happening quietly in the background. So let's talk about this first point. See, the biggest lie about spiritual guidance is the belief that guidance should feel obvious, dramatic, or just unmistakably spiritual. But most people don't consciously choose this belief, they actually absorb it. Maybe from books, from social media, from spiritual stories, from well meaning teachers who emphasize signs, messages, synchronicities, and downloads as being the only way. So people begin expecting guidance to only arrive as a clear sign, a repeating symbol, a sudden message, a moment of certainty, or a powerful spiritual experience. They're certainly valid, but they're definitely not the only ways. And when guidance does not arrive that way, they assume that it isn't happening. See, this belief sounds harmless, even inspiring, but it quietly sets an impossible standard because it teaches you to only trust guidance when it feels extraordinary. And anything subtle, emotional, or ordinary just gets dismissed. And spirit doesn't primarily work through extraordinary moments. On the opposite, it works through lived experience. Guidance is not designed to impress you, it's designed to move you. And here's why this lie is so damaging. Because when you believe guidance has to feel dramatic, you unconsciously place yourself in a passive role. You're waiting for spirit to do something to you instead of recognizing how spirit is already working with you. You start scanning your life for proof. Was that a sign? Was that spirit? Did I miss something? And that constant checking actually weakens trust because guidance isn't meant to pull you out of your life. It's meant to move you through it. Spirit doesn't override your humanity. It works through it, through your emotions, through your interests, through what expands you and what slowly drains you. When guidance feels dramatic, it tends to be kind of rare and destabilizing. But when it feels subtle, it can be constant. And spirit values consistency far more than spectacle. When you believe guidance has to feel dramatic, you unknowingly disconnect from the most reliable form of guidance there is, the kind that operates continuously, not occasionally. And this is why so many people say, I don't feel guided, even while their life is actively being redirected. So let's talk about the second point. Because once you believe guidance has to feel spiritual or dramatic, you begin filtering out the very signals that spirit's using most often. So you start dismissing maybe a gradual loss of interest in something that you once wanted really badly, or maybe a relationship that feels heavier now instead of later, or perhaps a job or a path that no longer energizes you. Maybe an internal resistance that just won't escalate into crisis, but it also won't go away. Or maybe timing delays that disrupt your plans without explanation. Now, instead of recognizing these as actual guidance, you just rationalize them away. Maybe you tell yourself, oh, that's just fear, or that's just me being tired, or I shouldn't read too much into that. And the moment you dismiss them, you stop paying attention. Now, over time, this creates a very specific experience. You feel thoughtful, you feel reflective, you feel unsure, but you just don't feel guided. not because guidance stopped, but because you were taught to look for it in the wrong language. Spirit doesn't usually guide through instruction, it guides through alignment. It doesn't say, go here. It makes staying where you are just feel increasingly uncomfortable. It doesn't say, choose this. It removes the energy from everything else. And because this process feels gradual and human, people assume it's not spiritual at all. And that assumption is what creates confusion. See, you're being guided, but you're just dismissing the evidence because it doesn't match your expectations. This is also why people become stuck in cycles of indecision. They don't trust that first nudge, so they wait. They don't trust the emotional signal, so they overthink it. They don't trust the loss of energy, so they just try to push through. And the longer they override subtle guidance, the louder life has to become to get their attention. What could have been a gentle redirection becomes frustration. What could have been a quiet ending becomes burnout. What could have been smooth transition becomes a crisis. Spirit only and always starts softly. It's only when the soft signals are ignored that things starts to feel chaotic. And people often say, well, why did Spirit let it get this bad? But Spirit didn't get louder. You just stopped listening when it was quiet. That's not judgment, it's just mechanics. So let's talk about the third point, because real spiritual guidance is subtle, consistent, and deeply practical. And it often looks like maybe a door quietly closing, perhaps momentum fading, enthusiasm draining away, or repeated emotional nudges you feel, or perhaps a sense that something just no longer fits, even if you can't explain why. See, guidance rarely tells you what to do, it shows you what no longer works. It guides you by adjusting conditions, not by issuing commands. This is why guidance so often feels like removal before it actually feels like direction. See, something's taken away, an option closes, a desire fades, a version of you no longer works. And people say, well, why would Spirit take this from me? But guidance isn't taking something away, it's clearing space. See, Spirit doesn't guide by adding answers on top of a full plate. It guides by removing what no longer belongs so that the next step can even be seen. This is also why guidance often feels uncomfortable before it feels reassuring. Alignment doesn't always feel good at first, it feels honest. And honesty can feel disorienting when you've been attached to certainty all the time, but once alignment settles, clarity follows naturally, without effort, without forcing, and without needing proof. That's the difference between guidance that feels sporadic and guidance that just feels stable. And this is why guidance often feels inconvenient at first. It disrupts certainty, it interferes with plans, it challenges identity. It asks you to release attachment before offering clarity. And none of that feels particularly spiritual in the moment, but when you look back, it's unmistakable. See, most people only recognize guidance after they've already followed it. They say things like, I don't know why I left, but I'm sure it was the right move. Or I didn't have a sign, I just couldn't stay anymore. Or it stopped feeling aligned, even though it looked perfect on paper. Now that's guidance. Guidance is not about answers, it's not about movement, it's not clarity, it's alignment. When you stop waiting for guidance to arrive as information and you start noticing how your life is being gently repositioned, guidance becomes steady instead of sporadic. So here's a simple reflection that you can sit with. Think about something in your life right now that no longer has energy behind it, even though maybe you wish you did. Not something dramatic, just something that feels quieter than it used to. And instead of asking, well, why isn't this working anymore? Try asking, what might spirit be loosening here? That question alone shifts you from resistance into cooperation, and guidance becomes much easier to recognize from there. So you see, the biggest lie about spiritual guidance is just believing that it's got to feel dramatic, mystical, or unmistakably spiritual, because in reality, guidance works quietly through alignment, emotional shifts, timing changes, and subtle redirection. When you stop waiting for signs and start noticing how your life is already being guided, trust just returns naturally. And if you want help recognizing how spiritual guidance, then you can really work with that and do it without forcing signs or overthinking. See, I created a free spirit guide connection starter kit, and it walks you through understanding subtle guidance in real time and learning how spirit already works with you. And you can download that in the link below. And that's something that's there free for you. So now, once you start recognizing guidance, a new question usually comes up. How do you strengthen that connection even more? And that's where your vibration becomes critical. And I explain all that clearly in the next episode titled The One Thing That Instantly Raises Your Vibration and Why Raising Your Vibration Strengthens Your Connection with Spirit. So take a look at that. That's a really important episode. So keep raising your vibration. Love and light. This is Chris.